Ani, and welcome to another installment of the Grass Dance Chronicles series. Today, as you can tell from the title, we're going to be making the apron of the regalia. All the materials that I used will be listed in the description below, as well as links to all of the other videos that are in this series. I do suggest that you watch the video through before you actually follow the tutorial, taking any actions, just because a few times I do explain two different routes that you can take, and I just want you to gather all of the information for each route before you move on, and you'll see. But I will stop talking and let's get started with the video. Alright, so the person that I want to make this for, their entire waist is about 29 inches, but I want to leave the sides of their body open for side drops on the belt. Later video. Use myself as an example. I measured from about like right here to right here, so not like completely the front of them, but like just a little bit of side, a little bit of the front of the body to be visible, and that's so I can put some side drops on the outfit. With that being said, their measurement is about 11 inches, and then I measured from that point on their waist where they want to have the top of the apron sit on their body. I measured from there to about their kneecaps, and that was 17 inches. Although I am thinking now I might make that a little shorter, just because the fringe is pretty long and I don't want that fringe to be like down to their feet. So I just took that down to 15 inches, not a whole lot. Now 11 by 15 is what we want the final product to be. And in order to get that, we need to remember seam allowance. So I like to work with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So that 11 width will turn into a 12 width, and that 15 length will turn into a 16 length. So then the next thing we do after we have all our measurements in order is we're going to draw a box, and that box will be 12 inches wide and 16 inches long. I usually like to start with the width. Now my paper is crooked, and I actually have a mark here already from the last project, so I'm going to start with that mark, and then I'm going to measure 16 inches from that mark, just sort of lining up my ruler with that straight line so we can keep all angles right angles. Now something I just kind of accidentally did was I drew a line at the 1/2 inch mark, so this right here is going to be seam allowance. If you measured from the edge of the paper, then go ahead and mark an extra 1/2 inch and draw that line so that you know you can just see where seam allowance is. And as always, find the middle points, because the middle points are always going to be helpful in drafting that out. So I found the number 8 and I drew a mark, and then I'm going to mark that 12 inches, and that's going to be including that the seam allowance here. I'm just going to measure from the edge of the paper. Okay, line up my ruler, go ahead and draw that line, and then finish it off. And right here I already have a line drawn. If you don't, of course, connect, point A to point B. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side here. And just like we did with with this one, we're going to find that middle point. With the measurement being 12, we'll find 6 inches. And then I want to go ahead and do that for the other sides. Don't know if I really truly need to on all of the sides, but I'm going to do it anyways. So now, of course, at this point, this is where you and I might do the same thing. We might do something different because the shape of the apron is going to be a complete design choice for you. For instance, here is the top, and the top is got these two, like a banner-like point. Some people might do it round, some people might do it triangle. The same thing applies to the apron. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be doing a rounded off apron. Again, that's just a design choice, but you'll see how I do it, and then if you're wanting to do a different shape, you can apply some of those same methods into measuring out and figuring out where all your points and design choices are going to take place. So there's two different ways we can come up with that curve. We can simply just draw one and then fold the paper in half right here. Once you have it folded in half, then you cut it together so that when you unfold it, then you have the whole thing cut out. I am going to be a little more precise with it and do some measuring. Of course, one thing I almost forgot to do is mark the seam allowance so I can remember what exactly is going to be in like the finished product. Okay, so I went ahead and drew some like swigglies where you can expect the fabric to not be visible because that would be in the seams. And I think what I want for the dip then is for it to start maybe about an inch below that midpoint right here. So I marked an inch below that. I'm going to mark an inch below right here. And then I don't want it to go directly to like the middle. I want some like flatness on that bottom of the dip. So I think, let's see. I think I'll mark about 1.5 inches on either side of this midpoint. So here are the 2 marks. Pro tip, one of these rulers is very helpful for drawing out curves. See, I'm just gonna trace that, pick it up, see if I like it. And I kind of don't. I don't like how sharp it is right here. So I'm just gonna go in. Just coming in from the future here real quick to say that I had forgotten to add some seam allowance right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go around this curve or this new curve that I marked, and mark the seam allowance and draw a new line. Yeah, after drawing a few lines, I think I'm going to pick this one right here, if you can even see. It's very close to what I had before, but it's just not as now I am going to cut this box out, and then we'll fold it in half at this midpoint, and then we'll cut so that the sides come out even. All right, here it is. Now, it is my suggestion, if you are able to take this up to the person who's going to be wearing it, whether it's yourself or somebody else, and try it on their body and see if you like the width and the length and all that. If you don't like the width, then you would want to take that out from the middle and sort of like cinch that in. You may even just need to draw a whole new pattern piece. If you don't like the length, then you can take it off from the top to shorten it, or of course, add to the top. Again, the other way around, if you want to add width, you'd have to add it in the middle. I, however, like this, so I'm not going to make any changes to it. Now, if you watched the video about the yoke, then you probably already know a lot of the next steps. They're going to be pretty much the same, aside from the top, like how we're going to assemble it so that you can put it on the body. But for now, we're going to take our material and we're going to cut 4 pieces out of it. That's because 2 are going to be for one panel and 2 are going to be for the other, so that you have a panel on the outside and then you have a panel lining the inside. But of course, if you have your fabric folded in half, then you just have to lay the pattern piece on it twice to cut it out. And that would produce 4 pieces. So now I have all my pieces cut out. I have 4 pieces cut out total. Here is where you and I are gonna kind of branch off a little bit and go do some different things and then catch up with each other. And after that, I'll provide instructions on how to assemble all the pieces together. All right, I have all the applique and design work done on these panels. Now, before we get to assembling them together, I want to do a step that I actually didn't do in the first video with the yoke, and that is adding interfacing. And honestly, the only reason I didn't do this step is because I kind of forgot about it, but I did mention it in the beginning of the video. So I have this PLF 36 Pellon. It's this iron-on fusible. It's kind of just like a lightweight interfacing, and I'm gonna cut out 2 pieces of this. So I just have this, lay it on there. It's okay that it's a little too long because I don't really care for the interfacing being in the seams anyway. And now I just want to cut off the seam allowance on the sides. And it's totally okay if it's not perfect. Now, instead of working with these appliqued pieces, I'm going to use the inside lining pieces to attach the interfacing to. So we'll do the wrong side up and apply the rough gluey side down onto it, and then you just iron it on. Simple as that. Okay, so I'm going to say what the next step is and give you a few different options on how to complete that step. So please listen through this whole next segment before moving on. The next step overall is to take one piece of applique, so take the outside panel and then take the lining and apply them right sides together. We're gonna stitch starting here and going all the way around and ending here while leaving the top straight edge open. But before we do this stitch, we want to add in whatever we're doing to make it able for them to fasten to their body. So what I'm going to be doing is taking some of this elastic thread. I have, how long are these again? These are about 3 inches long, and that's because these are pretty stretchy, and a 1/2 inch of them are going to be inside of the seam. So I'm going to take, I have 2 of these, one for each hip. I'm going to take this and apply it on the inside like so. Maybe not right at the top, probably like a 1/2 inch down, because this is going to be seam allowance. And then we'll pin it in there, and that'll be included in the stitch. Same thing with the other side. We'll apply this and then do the stitch. And the idea here is this other side right here is going to be attached to the other one, so that both the front and back panels of the apron are attached, and they just kind of slip it on over their waist like you say with like a skirt. Another option I have, if you don't like that, is using bias tape. So you would take a strip of bias tape long enough so that they'd be able to tie it on their side, and just like the elastic, you would place it about a 1/2 inch down on the inside of the 2 layers here, and then you would stitch it into that side seam, and doing that on both sides. The only thing is, for the other panel, you would do the same thing. So you wouldn't be using the same piece. You'd cut 4 of these, which is different than cutting just 2 of these. I would also heavily suggest getting double fold bias tape. It'll say on the package when you go shopping for it. You know, it says double fold. Sometimes you'll see single fold. I don't suggest single fold. That is because this double fold, it's sort of fray blocked itself by the rough edges being on the inside. I would suggest doing a quick straight stitch down the side where it opens, and that so those rough edges don't come out. I just know this because I have used bias tape as ties on regalia pieces before, and over time it opens up and those rough edges start to fray, and then your tie will fall apart and you won't have a way to tie the thing on anymore. So yeah, there are your 2 options. Let's get started. Quick tip, I would also suggest going over the part of the stitch where the elastic band is. Again, I'm going to do that with a zigzag stitch, and that is just to make that stitch nice and strong so it never loosens the stitch over time or wants to fall apart. Now before you get both of these sewn together, put the one that isn't sewn together aside for now. Start by cutting some notches around here. Now when you have a curve going outward, you want to cut little triangles out of there instead of just slits like we did before. All right, once your curves look like this, then take it to the ironing board and iron these seams open. Do not skip this step. Don't do it. Okay, again, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do and another way that you could possibly do it. So if you are doing the bias tape, then you just set this one aside and, you know, do this panel now. If you're doing the elastic like me, we're actually going to take this panel and we're going to put it in between the 2 layers. It sounds crazy, I know. If you don't want to do that, what you can do is cut 2 more pieces of elastic, put it in the inside of this like usual, and then let's say that this is the elastic on the front panel and this is on the back panel, just for a moment, okay? What you can do is join the two elastic together by sewing them in a stitch, and then you'd have the elastic band. But I am going to do it a little differently. All right, so now I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to place it right sides together with this one. You want the applique touching, and then I'm going to scrunch it up a bit so that this is far away from the stitch. I'm even going to pin it in place, but I'm going to pin it from the outside like so, and that's just so it's easier for me to remove the pins later on. I just really do not want to accidentally catch this in the seam that I'm about to sew. That would mean seam ripping, and I do not have time for that. Okay, now we have this on there, and I'm going to take this one and sandwich that over top of there. Of course, taking care to place my elastic where I want it to be. I think I'm going to pin the elastic actually, because it keeps wanting to move around as I'm trying to. And now I'm going to sew all the way around. Again, not sewing this 1/2 inch at the very top, so that we can leave that little flap open. All right, side seams are sewn, notches cut, side seams pressed open. All of the pins that I put in are now out. Now what we get to do is grab this, take it out, and then turn this right side out as well. So now what we have are two pieces, and they are joined by this waistband. Now one at a time, we're going to split these flaps open here, or the outer from the inner lining, and then we'll fold in the lining 1/2 inch. Okay. And then we'll also fold in the outer portion 1/2 inch, put them together, and pin. And so that will finish off this edge. We'll do this for the whole edge on each panel and do a top stitch. Now remember that this top stitch, the thread will be visible, albeit it'll be covered by the belt that is part of the regalia anyways, but keep in mind, I think I'm just going to go ahead and use the blue thread that I have in my machine right now. And now we are in the home stretch. We have this all put together. The very last thing to do is to apply the fringe. If you are wondering how I put the fringe on, go ahead and check out the yoke video. I show you how I put the fringe on there. And yeah, I thank you for watching, Chimigwech, and I'll see you on the next one. Bama Pigwabman.